dámy a vážení pánové, je mu velkou ctí představit vám nyní další přednášející, kterou je paní Jane Burke. Jak uvidíte sami, velmi zajímavá dáma, která je v současné době viceprezidentkou společnosti ProQuest pro strategické plánování. Ale má za sebou velmi bohaté zkušenosti a bohatou historii. Začínala jako knihovnice v Cook Memorial Library v Illinois. Následně se stala spoluzakladatelkou společnosti Endeavor. Great. Další společnosti Notice, které podnikaly v oblasti automatických knihovnických systémů. A od roku 2005 je generální ředitelkou společnosti Serial Solutions a viceprezidentkou ProQuestu, ale neustále si udržuje i tu akademickou nohu, i tu akademickou část svých aktivit, je nositelkou řady ocenění knihovnických a členkou správních rad několika knihoven. Jane, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello everyone. I'm very, very pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I want to follow up on what George said. I want to talk about what I think is the threat to libraries as the internet has made most information available electronically. And I also want to talk about discovery as a way of overcoming that particular problem. I will talk about research. I will talk about the problem that libraries are facing, and then I will talk about how I think discovery systems, the new discovery systems, can actually help solve the problem. Let me start by being very clear. I am a person who spent most of my career in creating library automation systems. And relevant to today's environment, those automated library systems are dead. What we have traditionally done to provide user access to the materials in the library no longer works. And that's my starting point. The OPAC is dead. This is a word, disintermediation. Disintermediation. It's a long word, and it's a word that I first heard when internet startup companies became prevalent in the United States economy. Many internet startup companies have caused old ways of doing things to become obsolete. Travel agents. Most of us book our travel online. Some of us even buy our shoes online, so we no longer need shoe stores. In the internet age, libraries are at risk of being disintermediated. The view that the library is an essential part of supplying information for researchers is being questioned. And if it proves to be true, we will be disintermediated, that is, dropped from the supply chain. As George showed you, it is true that the old model of the library is gone. And if you think about it, it is not really surprising. But we have to think kind of back a long time to understand why that happened. We have created large libraries filled with books because that was the way information was packaged. it was the fact that information was printed on paper and bound into books that really caused the library as a place to be created. After all, that paper package needed to be shelved somewhere. It needed to be put somewhere. Someone had to describe it. In the age of the internet, users no longer have to come to the books go to them. And so the time for a building called the library, where someone had to come to the information, has really passed. And we're now at a point where the library's role in supporting research and information has to take a very different form because they no longer have to come to the books. It's that simple. And as I said before, the OPAC really is dead. What we did in the versions of library automation that all of us have lived through was we put a fairly short record about the book in a system. We called it the Online Public Access Catalog, and it represented a very thin layer of metadata about what the library had. But that was okay, because they had to come to us to get the book. And so we could help them. We could say to them, yes, that's what the OPAC says, but what the book is really about is this or that. So when they still had to come to us, we could overcome the limitations of our OPACs. And in fact, I think many times our OPACs really represented sort of our showing off our MARC records rather than the kinds of things that users have been getting from Amazon for more than a decade. How many OPACs make recommendations? If you like this, you'll like that. How many OPACs show book covers? More than used to, but still not very many. The OPAC is related to the fact that people had to come to the building. Now that they no longer have to come to the building, the OPAC is also, as it was constituted, is also not very relevant. I mentioned Amazon. Last week, Amazon announced that in the month of April, they sold more ebooks than print books. They sold more ebooks than hardcovers and paperbacks combined. And users are reading electronically. They are reading their fiction electronically. They are reading their articles electronically. They are reading their book chapters electronically. Let's not kid ourselves. The OPAC is dead. This isn't new in coming. This should not be news to any of us. For more than 10 years, research institutions have been telling us that end users prefer access to materials from where they are. That for more than 10 years, they have been saying they would prefer to use the internet to do their research, because it means they can do their research wherever they like. They can be at home, they can be in the library, they can be in the coffee shop, they can be wherever, and the information comes to them. They don't have to go to the information. Are you aware of Ithaca? Ithaca is a research institute. It is funded by several of the large foundations, and it does excellent research around the role of the library, and particularly around the role of the academic library. In 2008, they published a very, very important study that reflected work they had been doing since the year 2000. Ithaca had actually measured the perceptions of the library in the year 2000, in the year 2003, in the year 2006. This is what's called a longitudinal study, multiple measurement points. When they published the results of that in 2008, this was one of their very important conclusions. The role of the library as a gateway to information has fallen. And they used that big word, disintermediated. That the library, the perception of the library as very important in the supply chain was fallen. Now, it's probably not unusual. Many of your users use your databases from wherever they are, and they believe that that information just somehow got there. I think there's a strong erosion of the brand of the library because people see electronic information and they do not understand how it came to be there for them. They do not know that you chose it carefully, that you paid for it. And in fact, what happens is they simply think it must be free. And so it's not surprising that they do not perceive the library as the same essential as when they had to come to the building to the paper. This study, this is a new study from OCLC. It's a very nicely put together study. You could read it very quickly. But it is very concerning that for a study published in 2010, the way most users perceive the library is still about books. That the overwhelming brand, the overwhelming way in which the library is perceived is still about books. And this is in a time when you spend most of your money on electronic materials. And yet the library is still perceived as about books. As George said a minute ago, that's the risk of being perceived as the book museum. Not a good place to be. I think one of the notable things about the current generation of students, undergraduate students, graduate students, early faculty members around the world is that they have a very common way of doing things. It's really quite exciting to me to watch how research has become very, very global. But those young researchers, I think, everywhere share these attributes. This is the way that EDUCAUSE, which is the educational organization in the United States of higher education institutions, this is the way EDUCAUSE defines those researchers today. They want to be self-sufficient. They do not ask questions. They think they know how to search. They can use Google, so they think they know how to search. And they don't want to ask questions, so they think they know how to search and they don't want to ask questions. They expect that all of their search systems work like Google. That is a very widespread expectation. After all, they use Google on their laptop, they use Google on their iPhone, they use Google on their tablet. They think all search works that way, and if it doesn't, they don't have very much time to figure that out. And let's remember, today's student is tomorrow's faculty member. This is another study that talks about the problem. This study said, library is seen as an intimidating and inconvenient place. That's a problem. It is understandable that students are drawn to using search engines, easy to use, available to everyone, quick and bountiful. So we must ask ourselves, the search systems that we expect end users to use versus what they expect to use has a big gap. We must be very aware of that because that gap reflects on our value as libraries. This is one other study I will mention to you. This is a study called Project Information Literacy. It's a very widespread study of undergraduate usage of the library. This study is a good news, bad news study. The good news is those undergraduates all talked about how they believed in the library. They all expected to do research by using library resources. The bad news is they showed a big tendency to give up. If it wasn't quick, if it wasn't easy, if it didn't fit into the very limited amount of time that they had, they would go to the internet. So while they believe in the library, that belief has to be rewarded by the access systems that we provide for them, or they go elsewhere. You all are responsible for how you spend the money on your resources. And the result of the problem is this thing we call the value gap. This is a theory from a very well-known library researcher in the United States. Her name is Carol Tenneper. You may have read some of her studies. She studies the value of the academic library. And she says today, the academic library faces a value gap. As we spend more and more sorry about that. As we spend more and more money on materials, that's the yellow line, the perception of the importance of the library has fallen. That's the blue line. What Carol has done here is chart that Ithaca study that shows that as we spend more and more money on our materials, the perception of the importance of the library and the library's materials has fallen. And so value gap is really a concept about the investment that the library spends and the value of that investment. Okay, one last thing. We didn't believe any of this. At ProQuest and Serial Solutions, like many people, we thought we knew better. And so we did our own research. We did an anthropological research project. This concept was created by the library at the University of Rochester in our state of New York, and we followed their model. We meaning ProQuest and Serial Solutions. What we did was we actually camped out with students. We sat with them, we watched them do research. How did we get to do that? We solicited them on Facebook. We said on Facebook, if you have a real research topic and you are willing to let us watch you, we will pay you money. Money works. We were able to actually observe in person many undergraduates, more than 70 of them, doing their research papers. And of course, the first thing we learned was they don't do it in the library. Some do, but not many. We saw many of them researching in the coffee shop. We saw many researching in their dormitory room. We saw many doing it from home. And we sat with them and we watched. It was very scary. It was very, very scary. I want to tell you stories about 3 of them. We watched a student named Aaron do his research. Aaron was a 3rd-year undergraduate student. What in the United States we call a junior. Aaron had been in school for 3 years. He told us he knew how to use the library. His topic was on Hurricane Katrina, a very large hurricane that wiped out our city of New Orleans, and how the alternative press, meaning the press from African Americans, the press from different cultures versus the mainstream press, how they handled the coverage of Hurricane Katrina. We have the videotape of Aaron doing his research. He comes to the library website. He is very diligent. He goes up and down the database list. He goes in and out of databases. And after quite a long time, he finds nothing. And he goes to Google. Was not unusual. Susan was a 2nd-year student, and Susan had a scientific topic. She was researching something in chemistry. Susan started her research in JSTOR, and she stayed in JSTOR the entire time. She didn't find very much. She was kind of puzzled, but she didn't find very much, and she stopped. And at the end, we asked her why she had used JSTOR. And she said, well, my English professor last year recommended JSTOR. Faculty recommendations are very important. And if they don't know anything else, they will use the one whose name they remember. Finally, we have Josh. Josh was the success story. Josh was the one that could almost make you believe that people really did know how to use the library. He came in, he found the right databases, he did his research, he was very successful, and in the end we said to him, Josh, why, how? And he said, well, a librarian came to my class last week and talked about what databases to use. This is the notion of just-in-time intervention. That's what we can do instead of staying in the building. We need to be with them. We need to talk to them at the right point in time. So, the conclusions from our own research were that, and this is the good thing, there's a very strong belief in the value of libraries on the part of researchers. A very strong belief that the library has credible content, that the library's content is better than what's on the internet, that it is the preferred place to do academic research. But when we asked these same people what they actually did, this is the result. Belief versus actual behavior is what George showed you with all those empty stacks. I think this is the way it feels to most end users when they come to the library. Long lists of databases, different interfaces on everything, many of those interfaces very complicated. and when they used the catalog, finding a very small portion of what the library really has. If you think about what you put into your OPAC, mark records for e-journals, but nothing about the articles. The articles are somewhere else in some database. You put into your OPAC metadata about the book, but nothing that guides people to the book chapters. Very few put the institutional repository materials into the OPAC. And so the OPAC represents a smaller and smaller portion of what the library really offers. One of the important factors that I think we do not remember very well is that to a researcher, the best piece of information is probably not a whole book. The best piece of information is probably an article, or 2 articles, or a chapter. But generally, the best piece of information which speaks directly to what they're looking at might not be represented in the OPAC at all. Alternatively, as you've gotten more and more databases, you tend to put up a big list. Users, as we learned from Susan, do not remember what's in what database. You think that you tell them that, but as you have gotten more and more databases, and your list has gotten longer and longer, it's harder for them to really know what's in what. I was a reference librarian, a long time ago, but I was a reference librarian. Even then, I could never teach anyone the difference between what was in the card catalog and what was in the periodical indexes. That concept of format, that concept that somehow the book is different than the article, is not a concept that today's students understand or accept. They work in a multimedia world. To them, it is all digital information and it is all the same. And the longer that we try to somehow segregate by format, the more we are in danger of being disintermediated. It just doesn't matter anymore. They need to find everything at once. And then they speak for themselves. So, what did we conclude from all this research? We concluded that it would be easier for the library to be important if the library, instead of asking users to search here for this and here for that, could have a single starting place. If the library could have a Google-like search that offers everything that the library has in a single search, that was the most important thing that could be provided. We also figured out that it's important to help them identify databases. I am not saying that different databases are not important. I'm saying there's a difference between the starting place where you do a search and what you learn from what you discover in that search. And that we've done it previously, we've done it differently. We've asked people to know the right place to search instead of allowing them to search and deduce to find out from that what's the right place. Because this is their mental model. This is how they think it works. How many of you, as you look at your OPACs and have studied their search logs, see users putting journal articles in the OPAC box? It's a search box. I put stuff in it. If it doesn't come back, I don't know why, but it's a search box and I use it. This is what Google has taught them. Single search, across everything, across formats. But George just told us what's wrong with Google and Google Scholar. They have a lot of things that are not really quality information. They have a lot of things that are not really scholarly information and that are not really well chosen by experts like yourselves. So that's why discovery interfaces, why discovery systems have really happened. Discovery systems have happened as a way of being that single search box across the full breadth of the library's collections. That single place where everything that the library has can be found in a single search. And I think that's really the most important point about discovery, is it gets us away from segregating things into different systems and puts everything we have into a single place where it can all be discovered. And the word discovered is a very important part of this. No one is saying that they will not use individual databases, but they will use them only if they find them. Discovery is the starting place. This is how you find information and how you can conclude that the best information for your particular topic came from this database. So I'll go back to that database. So discovery is a starting place. It's an overview place. This is how we define the success of discovery systems. First of all, and most importantly, users find what they want quickly and easily. Secondly, we can really measure how things are being used. This part's very important to you, and it's important in how you talk about the value of the library. Electronic resources have held out the promise of being measurable for quite a long time. Good discovery systems really do that and really report it. And thirdly, also important, discovery systems provide a competitive advantage over the internet. We want users to value the library. We want users to feel affiliated with the library, to use our library resources. And discovery systems can help that happen. Now, I understand that many of you have been using one of the elements of discovery, and that's federated search. I believe federated search is a form of discovery. There are actually, in my mind, 3 kinds of discovery systems currently available in library technology. Federated search, what I would call discovery layer, some people call them next generation catalogs, and thirdly, web scale, true web scale like Google discovery systems. You've been using federated search, a number of you. Federated search has flaws, but it is better than nothing. And it has gotten a little better over time. The problem with federated search, as most end users perceive it, is it's too slow. The way federated search works, its technology is just too slow. Another problem with federated search is most federated search systems only return a limited number of results. When a federated search system goes and searches a particular database, it only brings back 50 or 100 results, so your users don't see the complete breadth of what the library is offering. But, let me say again, federated search is better than nothing. It does give people a single search box, and it does have value. Secondly, discovery layer. Discovery layer, or next generation catalog, is really all about making your OPAC prettier. It's really all about giving your OPAC keyword searching, having your OPAC have facets, and making your MARC records more usable. The problem with next generation catalog is while they are very attractive, they do not show the full breadth of what the library has because the journal articles are not in there. The institutional repositories are not in there. What you have done with the next generation catalog is you have made your OPAC and your MARC records more attractive, but you have not made it any more comprehensive. But they are pretty. Let's take a look at a couple. This is an example from Primo. You see that very pretty. It has book covers. It has facets. It provides keyword search and relevance ranking. Much more attractive than old-fashioned OPACs, I think. This is the one from Innovative Interfaces. This is called Encore. Again, you see book covers. You see a tag cloud. So people are getting sort of a sense of the proportion of what's in there. Again, the problem is it's really only across the MARC records. This is Aqua Browser, which is actually sold by Serial Solutions. In this one, you see a word cloud, a visualization technique, as well as facets. And this is ViewFind. ViewFind is an open source discovery layer package that was created by a university in the United States, and it is really quite widely used, and I think it's a successful example of open source. But all discovery layer systems, while they really do make your OPAC more attractive, have the same problem that not everything's in there. The articles aren't in there. The data sets aren't in there. The institutional repository is not in there. The images are not in there. So while you're doing more attractive searching, you're not searching everything. That's where web scale discovery, what I call web scale discovery, comes into play. With web scale discovery systems, you really do have single search across all of the library's collections. You really do have everything that your library subscribes to in a single big index. People ask me about the difference between federated search and web scale discovery. The difference is that web scale discovery is a pre-created index. The architecture of web scale discovery is just like Google. Put it all in there ahead of time. That allows you to coordinate the index. It allows you to have very, very fast response times. It allows you to show everything. Web scale discovery systems are not to be installed locally. Web scale discovery systems are big. They're very large. If the provider of the system is doing their job, that index is in hundreds of millions or almost billions of records. Web scale discovery systems, because they have all the articles from all the commercial providers, because they have all of the books from the library, because they have all of the images from the institutional repository, are very, very, very large. Let me give you an example. Vanderbilt University has more than 2 million items in their OPAC. But when they measure the library at the level of articles and books and objects, their library has more than 220 million items. Discovery systems, because they break down the databases into the articles, because people can really find things at the object level, really make the library collection much, much larger and much more expansive. And so most discovery systems are done today by large commercial providers that then use rights management to control your library's access to the things to which you subscribe. These are the providers of web-scale discovery systems, at least the ones that I know about. WorldCat Local from OCLC, Summon from Serial Solutions and ProQuest, EBSCO Discovery Service, Ex Libris Primo Central, and Google Scholar. Don't forget Google Scholar. Google really is the competition, I think, to the library. They look like next generation catalogs. Discovery systems, web-scale discovery systems, are very visual. They have facets. They have little icons. But the beauty of web-scale discovery systems is that they have everything in a single search. When you do a search, you get a large number of results, just like the user does using Google. But the beauty is that you're getting the results from the library's chosen resources. I believe that web-scale discovery really is an answer, not the only answer, but an answer to the problem of disintermediation of the library. Web-scale discovery systems meet end-user expectations. They are comprehensive. Many people would like to say, can't possibly get everything into a web-scale discovery system, and I would argue with that. Web-scale discovery systems today have lots of stuff. Almost every provider understands that they need to make their metadata available in the web-scale discovery systems. They are providing their data to other people's discovery systems. They're very, very comprehensive. And they allow the library to prove its value. A couple of things you should think about as I close this up. First of all, the information world is flat as far as our users are concerned. Our users do not think about information by format. In the United States, you know, we have many farms and agriculture, so we talk about silos. Information in silos does not work for today's user. They expect to be able to find all formats together in a single search. The sooner you can move to that kind of capability for them, the more they will use what you have. Keep it simple. KISS in the United States stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. It's really a way of reminding ourselves that what we're doing with web-scale discovery is not for us. Web-scale discovery is not for us. You won't like it. You won't. You won't like it. It will feel too easy. You'll say, users ought to know the difference. Doesn't matter what they ought to know. We have to go where they are. So keep it simple. And market it. Libraries used to live in a world where people had to come to us. Now that we are in a world where they don't have to come to us, we must market ourselves. And we must market ourselves more than we are comfortable doing it. So brand this new tool. Use it as the foundation of a library marketing campaign. Give it a cute name, some kind. You know, give it a cute name. Believe it or not, people will remember it. What you want is that literature professor recommends your discovery service rather than an individual database. It makes a huge difference to the perception of the library. Remember that our users are in a very different place. That we need to accept how they work, how they think, how they are. This is a time of tremendous opportunity for libraries, if libraries will embrace users in that way. And finally, hurry up. We don't have unlimited time to accept this challenge. We have to move forward. don't think that you have a long, long time to adjust. We have to move forward. We have to hurry up. Thank you very much. I'm not sure how to give it off.
Thank you, Jane. Otázky.
I have one question. What's your explanation of the fact that 8 years after introduction of Google Scholar, it's still in the beta version and actually not very useful to the researchers? It's very strange because Google has money, expertise, people, it has everything. Does it mean that it has not found the proper business model for that service?
I think there are two answers. First of all, I think Google has lost interest. I think that Google Scholar was advocated by several very senior scientists at Google, and that they have lost interest, and therefore Google has lost interest. And I think that's combined with the fact that Google has had to struggle with Google Books and being taken to court by the publishers and all the things that have sort of not made them be able to go forward with actually selling information. I think, as you said, they expected to be able to sell Google Scholar, and for a variety of reasons they have not been able to do that. I think the other reason, though, is that they discovered that making research information available is more complicated than it seems. We know that. Our challenge is different than theirs. Our challenge is using all of our skills to make it seem very simple. Their challenge is learning all of the things we already know, because they know how to make it look simple, but they discovered, I think, all these underlying issues about authority control and metadata that have made it go very slowly. So I think it's a combination of I would say lack of real expertise in research information and business model.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Boris Kandera, I have a question. How are such techniques as deep indexing or processing of full text related to what you showed, the web-based discoveries and other techniques?
What a lovely question. Thank you. Deep indexing, where there are deep indexing databases, those are already being ingested into web-scale discovery systems, so that a web-scale discovery system will find that graph. It will find the chart as well as finding the article. And the ability to search the full text of articles is available in several of the web-scale discovery systems, so that when you are searching, you are actually searching the full text as well as the metadata. And one of the web-scale discovery services, which is Summon, has actually announced full text indexing of books. So really moving very fast in that way.
Thank you. One more question. Last question, poslední dotaz. Let me have one question.
Okay.
Jane, do you have any idea of how many libraries around the world do now use web-scale discovery systems? I mean, real life, not testing, but really.
Right. Who are really in production with web-scale discovery systems. I would say between 750 and 1,000. When I look at the various vendors and who actually has customers in production about that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.